Hi, my name is Tiana.
And I'm Anya, and we'll be discussing and reenacting the Greensboro sit-ins of 1960.
Four black men and a white businessman sat down at the Woolsworth counter on February 1st, 1960. They were there to protest the segregation policy which refused service to black men and women. The men refused service and remained in the diner until its closing. During their sit-in, the news crews and viewers arrived to watch the events unfold. The next day, the four men arrived with more college students. The Woolsworth Company was forced to revise its segregation policies, and the nation became aware of the civil injustices that blacks refused to accept. The protesters were peaceful, but a number of protesters were arrested for trespassing, disorderly conduct, and disturbing the peace. The 1954 ruling in Brown v. Board of Education stated that separate is inherently unequal. The Greensboro sit-ins exposed the nation to the reality of segregation beyond education.
Why are you sitting at the counter?
I'd like a burger and a milkshake, please.
Right up, I'll be right there.
You should be sitting at one of those tables. The counter is for whites only.
This counter is meant for anyone who wishes to eat here.
Why should I have to share my business with someone inferior?
You have created the social construct of race in order to maintain your false accusations against black people. These seats are just as much mine as they are yours because I'm a law-abiding citizen, a potential customer, a student, and a human being. They don't have to serve me, but I'm not going anywhere.
Now we will reflect on the impact of the Greensboro sit-ins on the civil rights movement as a whole. My first question to you is, how effective was the Greensboro sit-ins in accomplishing their short-term goals?
Well, the event allowed the participants to take a stand against discrimination and segregation.
Okay, next question. How effective was this event in relation to the civil rights movement as a whole?
Well, it ignited a fire into all non-white Americans to take a stand against segregation, and it showed that ordinary citizens can make a difference in people's opinions of others, and it also showed that the black youth, had a thing or two to say about segregation, and the civil rights movement wasn't just led by the adults. And the event also brought attention to the unequal treatment of non-white Americans, which was smaller incidences of unequal treatment because the nation seemed to focus on the institutions such as the 1954 Brown versus Board case, so they talked about education. But in order to desegregate the country, you can't start big, you have to start small, and that's what this event did. And the sit-in also was one of the events that showed from the Brown versus Board that separate but equal applies to everything. So you can't tell a nation that you have to have integrated schools but not have integrated facilities or integrated places to eat.
Can you think of any other events that occurred during this time that made a large impact on the civil rights movement?
Well, we could talk about the Freedom Rise, which came in 1961, and Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream, at the March on Washington in 1963, which all correspond and relate to the larger idea of the civil rights movement and what people of color, black people, Latinos, everyone needed in order to live in an equal nation.
Okay, can you identify some political symbols of this time?
Okay, well, we found 4 political symbols, which are as follows: the Woolsworth lunch counter as a symbol itself, the 1954 Brown versus Board case, the raised fist, and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC. So first, we talked about the counter, which is a symbol of resistance to the African American community, and in particular to black youth who felt empowered during the movement rather than just the adults who guided the movement. So it included all ages of black and brown bodies rather than just the adults who had more authority in the situation. In 1954, the Brown versus Board case and Ruby Bridges the case ruled that separate is inherently unequal and showed the world with the sit-ins that the Supreme Court was not enough to change the racist episteme and that the people in government had to take action, and relying on the government was not enough. For the third symbol, the raised fist, which is a symbol of solidarity, it was used in the civil rights movement and in the current Black Lives Matter movement. And even though the symbol is not owned just by the Black community, it shows the problems that the Black community faces and how every Black person can relate to that issue on the different levels. But it's also a unifying symbol for minorities fighting for equality and recognition, because civil rights isn't just a problem that Black people face, it's a problem that all people of color face and all minorities face, including women. And finally, SNCC, which is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was founded 2 months after the Greensboro sit-ins. It coordinated the Freedom Rides, which we talked about earlier, and was followed by MLK's speech, which sparked a wave of peace. The SNCC sparked a wave of peaceful and strategic protest for the civil rights of people of color.